Let's begin.
Hello and welcome to Pods Above Replacement, part of the Padres Hot Tub Podcast Network. My name is Raphie Cantor. I am the producer of Padres Hot Tub, and joining me from the Mile High City, he's trusting the process. It's John Precoda.
Raphie, we might be stinky, but I trust Sam Hinkie.
Do you ever look at what I ever have written for your introduction beforehand, or is it a surprise?
Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I'll catch it beforehand sometimes.
Let's hope that we don't have to wait around in as much of a rebuild as the 76ers did. But yes, today we are talking about the dirty T word, tanking, and whether or not tanking, as it is possible in baseball in 2023, is what the Padres should do with the rest of this miserable 2023 season. But first, John, how are you doing? How's your week been?
It's been good. I do appreciate the getting away from the Padres to try to make it something happy that might have happened first. I remember so many years as a Padres fan, we were just like such an abused fan base that we were always just like, all I want is competitive baseball in September. That's enough for me, you know. And we spent $270 million. We still don't have competitive baseball in September now that the month is turned over. But it's fine. I do appreciate the moving on to acceptance stage where like now it's just baseball again. You know, now it's just baseball.
It feels like I don't know about you, John, but I often forget that I have a bathrobe, and sometimes I'll look in my closet and I'm like, oh yeah, my bathrobe, and then I put it on and I proceed to it's so comfortable, and but I also don't ever want to do anything. I just want to sit in my bathrobe for hours and just do whatever. And it's that's how I feel the season is I was in such despair after things went so far south, and then I found the bathrobe that was Padres fandom in the 2010s of just
I knew you were going to make this analogy today. I knew it. I was like, he's probably going to make a Padres bathrobe analogy.
Yes, exactly. You had, you that plus 800 bet that you paid off. You took that value. But yeah, no, I'm just slowly sinking into my bathrobe, pulling up videos of Robbie Snelling throwing 5 innings in San Antonio and thinking, this is comfortable. I remember what this feels like. Okay. You know, maybe in 4 years, this will be something. That is the mantra that we've dusted off. So we hope that you are all finding your metaphorical bathrobe at this time. We hope, of course, that you're watching us on YouTube. Things have been going very swell over there. And potentially in the next few weeks, you could see John and I taking a page from the Chris Reed playbook and making some par shorter videos, because boy, those have been absolutely blowing up. We're really stoked on that. Thank you again, Chris, for doing that. And we hope you're subscribing so that you can see when all of those new videos are posted. But of course, the number one way to support the Padres Hot Tub Podcast Network is becoming a patron at patreon.com/Padres Hot Tub. And I guess, John, we should just start talking, first of all, about some clarification around the Padres, because we're recording this show on Thursday, August 31st, because I'm going out of town for the long weekend. And so, by the time you're hearing this, who knows what has happened in terms of the Padres. Maybe they've won 4 games in a row. Who's to say, John? They could.
I'm here to say that we will not have won 4 games in a row when people are hearing this.
I think that's probably safe. And therefore, it's also probably safe to say that not much has changed in terms of our picture in where we stand in terms of our record. We probably, anyway, this conversation is pretty safe to say. And one of the things that we talked about on Monday's Padres Hot Tub episode was where the Padres would land in the 2024 MLB draft, should the team continue its slide. And one of the things that we since we have been bad, have not had to deal with, is the draft lottery, which is something that happened for the first time in the last offseason. So this will be the second edition of the draft lottery. And that adds a completely new paradigm to what is also new territory for Padres fans, which is being spenders and being over the CBT threshold. And so I want to direct you all to Article 23, Section B, Subsection 4, Paragraph C of the 2022 Major League Baseball Collective Bargaining Agreement. Because this, I think, spells out in pretty clear terms, because we were a little confused on Monday's show, what the actual rule is. So the Padres, as a reminder for folks, are just past the second CBT threshold, which do you have an exact number on that? I didn't even think to pull that. I think it's like $250 million is the second threshold.
I don't remember where it is. I just know we're over it.
All right. Well, we're over this. Just trust us. We're over the second threshold. And so this rule says, quote, any club with an actual club payroll at or above the applicable second surcharge threshold in that contract year shall have its highest available selection in the next Rule 4 draft. That's the summer MLB draft as we know it. It's formerly known as the Rule 4 draft. That pick shall be moved back 10 places in the draft order. This penalty will apply in each contract year in which the club exceeds the second surcharge threshold, regardless of whether the club is a first, second, or third-time CBT payer, or whether the club has incurred the same penalty for exceeding the second surcharge threshold in a prior year. Notwithstanding the foregoing, a club shall not have its highest available selection moved back in the draft if that selection is in the top 6 selections of the first round of the draft, not including supplemental selections, blah, 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 but rather shall have its second highest selection moved back 10 places. So what those top 6 selections, that's not an arbitrary number. It's because those are the selections that are determined by the MLB draft lottery. And John, who qualifies for the MLB draft lottery? Oh, that wasn't supposed to be a trick question.
I only know which team. What, do you mean like which teams are not qualified? Is that what the question is?
Yeah, like who is going to be participating in the draft lottery? Like which teams?
Oh, so it's going to be the top 18 teams, I think it is.
Yes, the worst 18 teams,
so,
because those are the teams that don't qualify for the playoffs.
Minus the Washington Nationals, because there's also like the secondary rule that no team who receives compensation can get a lottery pick 3 years in a row, and if you don't receive compensation, then you can't do it 2 years in a row, or something basically along those lines.
Yes,
and they received a top 6 pick last year.
It's another competitive balance thing. So if you're considered a big market team by MLB, which the Nationals are, they pay into the revenue sharing, and because of that, they cannot receive a lottery pick 2 years in a row, and they had the number 2 pick last year, of course. So they are not going to be participating in the lottery. The highest that they can pick is 10th this year. So a lot of this is, like, if you can't tell, crazy bullshit minutia.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a lot of like, just trust us on this. Like, so just trust us. Okay. Like the top 6 picks are protected in the draft lottery. And so if the Padres do not get a pick in the draft lottery this year, they're not one of the top 6 picks. That means that wherever they land in the end of the season rankings, however bad they end up finishing, if they're not in that top 6, then their pick is moved back 10 places. And that is super, super important. And we're going to talk about why that is and lay that out in just a second. But just to kind of put some numbers on how likely it is that any of these teams get into the draft lottery and get a top 6 pick. John, will you tell us about what those top 3 worst teams, like the 3 worst absolute garbage teams who finished with the 3 worst records, what are their odds of, getting the first overall pick or getting in the draft lottery?
Yeah, so the A's, the Royals, and the Rockies pretty much have these first 3 slots locked up. And so that means that they all have the same exact odds as one another. All 3 of these teams have 16.5% odds of having the first overall pick, and then also an 81.1% chance of just landing within that top 6 lottery. So each of those 3 has the exact same odds. It doesn't matter that one team is tanking worse than the rest. It's just those top 3 teams, 16.5% for first, and then about an 82% chance for landing in the lottery.
Yeah, and the reason for that is simple. They don't want teams doing completely outlandish things to get the number 1 overall pick, which they used to do, and so they are trying to put a stop to that. So meanwhile, the Padres, who as of us recording this are the 9th worst team in baseball, they currently have just 2.7% odds at a first overall pick and 23.1% odds at a protected top 6 pick. So they have 23.1% odds to get any of the top 6 picks in the lottery. This feels like playoff odds all over again, John.
I know.
I'm like, wait, just slowly seeing the, everything dip down. So, quarter of a chance or so that they get a lottery pick. Now, I want to put that in contrast with the team that's actually in the number 6 worst spot right now, who the Detroit Tigers currently hold that. So if the Padres were able to get down to where the Tigers sit, they would have 7.5% odds at the first overall pick, which, not likely at all, but a lot better. Triple the odds of where they're at now, basically. And 53.3% odds at a protected top 6 pick. So a little better than half. So getting down to the number 6 pick is by no means a guarantee that you're in the draft lottery. You know what I mean? It's a coin flip. But at this point, you're kind of hoping that you can just make the best out of a horrible situation, right, John?
Yeah, and just to put a number on it, as of this recording, we're 2 games ahead of or behind the Tigers, depending on if you mean ahead of in the win column or behind in the loss column. But so we're 2 games away from improving our chances from that 23% to a 53%, which is obviously a significant difference. If we can catch them, it's funny. It was like were we like 3 games out of the playoffs earlier this month, and now we're 2 games out of a top 6 lottery pick. Wow.
Yeah. So as always, I'm going to reference Fangraphs because we owe them everything for this show, and they are very smart in the way that they think about things, and so they again. For prospects, what they like to do for future value is they like to convert future WAR into dollars, and that way you can evaluate people basically with a universal currency. And so much like what we talked about in the episode where we're talking about prospect value and saying, oh, okay, like a 60 overall prospect is worth this many tens of millions of dollars, et cetera, et cetera. They've done the same for the draft, and they basically said they've looked at data historically. And they've said, okay, the average number 1 pick is worth this, the average number 10 pick is worth this, and so on and so forth. So just to show you what we're talking about, the average value of a top 6 pick in the draft, any 1 through 6, an average value of that is $36.9 million. And to contrast that with where the Padres would fall, the range they would fall if they fail to make the draft lottery, if they fail to get one of those picks, they could land in the 17th spot through 28th. And again, the reason for that is if they finish with the 7th worst record and they don't get in the lottery, then they would then have the 17th pick because they're penalized 10 spots for having, being over the second CBT threshold. So, and then the 28th pick would be if they miraculously just missed out on the playoffs, then they would be all the way up to the 18th worst record overall, which would give them the 28th pick, okay? The average value of a 17th through 28th pick is $13.5 million per Fangraphs, okay? So nearly triple the projected value to get in those top 6 lottery picks than to get wherever the Padres would land. So the Padres, more than the average team, because of the CBT penalty, stand to benefit from getting in the draft lottery. So that's all great and well and good, but that's kind of convoluted to understand the dollars per WAR and the future value, et cetera, et cetera. So I wanted to go and just look at like what the average WAR is for each position in the draft, just to give you guys sort of a range. And I didn't want to do it for every single one. It was going to take a lot of time. So I picked 4. I picked 4 because they represent kind of important benchmarks for the Padres. And I did it on Baseball Reference, so I'm using B-WAR. I know I'm going against my own rule, but it's our fucking show, so we're going to do it. So I chose the first overall pick, the 6th overall pick, because of course that's the last lottery spot, the 17th overall pick, because that's the next conceivable spot that the Padres could select from, and the 28th overall pick, because of course that's the final spot that the Padres could pick from. So just to put this in perspective, the average B-WAR generated by first round picks is 15.4 B-WAR, and that includes a lot of dudes who just never pan out. So even taking into account your, for instance, Mickey Moniacs, who's, still figuring it out in Anaheim, your Royce Lewis's, your Brady Aikens, who's never put up any WAR, your Brian Bowling 2002 pick from the Pittsburgh Pirates, who put up negative 0.2 B-WAR. Given all of that, you still have Adrian Gonzalez, you still have Joe Mauer, you still have Justin Upton, you still have David Price, you still have Bryce Harper, you still have Steven Strasburg, Garrett Cole, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I could go on. The average of that is 15.4 WAR. You move down. Yeah, go ahead.
When you look at it, it's like they're either 40 plus WAR or 0 WAR. They're either they hit it or they do not hit it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just looking even. You got Matt Bush in there, of course. At 1.8 B-WAR. But there's really no one pre-2014 who's got like 10 or like 20. It's either like 30 plus. It really is either like 30 plus or nothing. I'd have to go back. I think there's a strong correlation to pitching in that sense as well. Because, Mark Apple, of course, for the Astros, like nothing happened for him. But just moving back to the 6th pick, just those few spots, the average WAR literally cuts in half. It goes from 15.4 in the first overall pick to 7.3 in the second overall pick. Because you got a lot more zeros. And yes, like for instance, you have Zach Greinke selected in 2002. You have Zach Wheeler selected in 2009 with the 6th overall pick. And you have Anthony Rendon selected in 2011. But other than that, you got like 0, 0, 0, 3, 1, et cetera, et cetera. You do have like an Andrew Miller and a Ricky Romero in there. But other than that, it's a few guys who made it and a bunch of guys who did not pan out. As you can imagine, going further down the list, going to the 17th overall pick, it's like, again, it's like even the guys who made it, the most productive 17th overall pick in career-wise is AJ Pollock, who, by the way, if you pick AJ Pollock in the draft, fucking amazing. Like, you should be stoked. I'm not denigrating that. I'm just saying that,
I think you're skipping over Cole Hamels.
Am I skipping over Cole Hamels? I am skipping over Cole Hamels. Cole Hamels picked with the 17th overall pick in 2002. So it's Cole Hamels and then AJ Pollock. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a lot, but you're sensing a pattern here, right, John? Like there's a lot more zeros. It's a lot more hit and miss, and it's just a lot more like variable, high ceiling, low floor the further back you get in the draft, right?
Yeah, for sure, definitely, yeah.
So I kind of buried the lead there a little bit. 5.3 average B-WAR on your 17th overall pick, and the 28th overall pick, the average sinks all the way down to 3.8 B-WAR. And the most productive, it's kind of cheating because he didn't end up signing. Garrett Cole was 28th overall pick technically, but he didn't actually end up signing. The most productive overall 20th overall pick who did sign was Colby Rasmussen. So you're kind of really getting down there. This is all of these numbers are dating back to the year 2000. So it really goes to show you like just how valuable it is to get into the top 6. And I really commend MLB for instituting the draft lottery and making all these anti-taking measures. But also, we should take. we should take, John. I'm like, am I right? Am I wrong? Do you feel the same way?
I mean, if the difference that you're gonna be getting is on average, a difference between somewhere between 15 and 7. So let's say, on average, if you get into the draft, it'd be like maybe 10-ish WAR somewhere in there versus less than 5. Then you're talking about 5 extra WAR, like $40 million in value at least. That is incredibly valuable and much more valuable than a month of, going 13 or I guess like 17 and 12 and then falling out of it, It's not going to be competitive baseball either way. So one poor month netting you somewhere on the order of $40 million seems like a win.
They could make beers at Petco Park $40 a pop, okay? And if they did that, it would still not pay for the difference between getting a lottery pick and somewhere in the back half of the first round, like just from a pure number standpoint. So if that puts it in concrete terms, if that like cracks it for you, like this is why the Padres should tank. And John, I think that you have kind of come up with some ways in which the Padres could tank if they decide to go down this route.
Yeah, so we were talking about it before, how we were 2 games out of 53.3% and 2 games out of like under 10% as well in terms of like getting one of those top 6 picks. And there's I have it listed that we're currently the 9th pick, which puts us at 23.1%, like we said. And then the 8th and 7th worst teams are 1 game ahead of us, and then the 6th is 2 games ahead of us. And it's basically the same thing in the other direction. So if you go the other way, our odds drop if we lose 1 more game than the Nationals to under 15.9%, and then we're 2 games out of being up near 10%. So it's like it is very clustered. There's a game one way or another. Like it could be that folks are listening to this podcast and we're already in the top 6 or past the 10th spot. But it's gonna be a huge difference in terms of those like couple swing games, which is funny. But so tanking imagined is what I titled the next part of it, because what exactly would tanking look like for the San Diego Padres? It would probably involve calling up dudes in the minors who are like relatively ready or on the 40-man roster to contribute more, and those would be names like Eggy Rosario, Jay Groom, Matt Waldron, the new acquisition Sean Reynolds, who's been getting smoked in AAA since we got him. Morejon, if his arm is healthy. Ray Kerr should be getting lots of innings. Kevin Kopps could be called up, although he's not on the 40-man and not Rule 5 eligible yet. Tirso is like on the 40-man or Rule 5 eligible, so putting him on the 40-man wouldn't make any difference if we want to get him some playing time. And then more playing time for Matt Batten, Jose Azocar, Ben Gamble, etc. But the thing about this that might end up hurting our chances at tanking is that you put all these young guys in who, are competing for their lives basically at the MLB level. They might end up being more successful than our current team is, because fun fact, our team has been very unsuccessful. In August after the trade deadline, we've gone 10-17. We've lost 13.5 games in the standings on the Dodgers just in August, which is just exceptionally amazing. And we've been tied for the 7th worst in the MLB in this month, and we've, in that time, among the teams that we could possibly catch in terms of playing poorly, that are worse than us in the standings, we had 0 games picked up on the White Sox and the Mets. We had 2 games picked up on the Pirates, 2.5 games picked up on the Tigers, and 1 game picked up on the Cardinals. So we are tanking currently. Like, that's what we're doing. And one of the reasons why we probably are is that our players are just exhausted. We have 7 players who have at least 479 plate appearances, which is just wildly more than any other team. And you can say, oh yeah, John, that's because we have a lot of stars, so they play every day. But do the Dodgers and Braves not have a lot of stars? Because the Dodgers only have 2 players, Mookie and Freeman, who have more plate appearances than that. Then Trent Grisham, who's our seventh most used player. The Dodgers only have 2 players who've had more plate appearances than Trent Grisham, and the Braves only have 4. There's most teams, their 7th most used player has about 300 plate appearances, and ours has almost 500. So we're putting basically the same lineup out there every single day, at least with 7 of those players, and they're exhausted. You look at their numbers, and I have it sorted by like WOBA in August, and all of our worst players are the guys that play every day, besides Ben Gamble and Ji-Man Choi, who are the very worst with very few plate appearances. The next guys are Trent Grisham at 238, Xander Bogaerts at 287, Fernando Tatis at 296, Machado at 302, Juan Soto at 310, Jake Cronenworth at 325, with only Ha-Seong Kim among like the regulars, and he's only in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th place in terms of WOBA. Is basically everybody's just being run into the ground, and that's probably contributing to our losing. So I do wonder whether calling up people and giving kind of fresh legs, fresh eyes, fresh attitude to the team would not actually hinder our chances at tanking instead of making them more likely.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit of a win-win in the sense that, like, there are some guys, especially on the pitching side, who stand to benefit from getting some time to develop at the major league level where there's, like, not stakes. Because, like, 2024, there are going to be stakes again. You know, like, it's like the expectation on this team is going to be basically everything that it was this year, with the exception that we now know how horribly wrong it could go. And I think that is even going to add more pressure in some way. So guys like Jay Groom especially, John, because as you noted, he's out of option years after this. So, like, he's going to have to come up or be DFA'd regardless. So you might as well bring him up now and just see if he's got anything. I mean, like, Musgrove is throwing, Yu Darvish is dead, ? Like, what are we, we're going to give Rich Hill, who's, like, not even going to be, like, in the league next year, ? Like, we're giving him innings and not Jay Groom. Like, what sense does that make? It doesn't. Matt Waldron, I said this on Padres Hot Tub this week, but, like, I want Matt Waldron to come up and throw 100% knuckleballs. Like, just throw that every time. Like, get the pitch fucking amazing. And, like, again, there's no stakes. Like, oh, they hit a home run. Oh, no, we're going to lose the game.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. Oh,
is it any worse than Rich Hill giving up a bomb? Like,
exactly.
And not only that, but we have had him playing an entire year down in AAA, and we really don't know. We have got basically no data because he was pitching on the moon the whole time, and knuckleballs don't work as well when there's no resistance in the air. So what was even the point of any of the data that we got? Put him in the major leagues and let's see what his knuckleball does in the major leagues. That's sea level.
Exactly. And again, like, we have guys like Eggy Rosario, who of course was derailed by injury this year. Sean Reynolds, who was acquired in a Ryan Weathers trade. Adrian Morejon, remember him? He's so close. He's so close, John. Adrian Morejon
he's coming.
He's coming. Ray Kerr, Kevin Kopps, the Golden Spikes himself. Like, there's a lot of guys. There's a lot of options to who we could come up. And you mentioned Trent Grisham, and I think that he's a perfect example, John, as you're about to point out, of what the problem with the way our roster is constructed is and how we keep rolling it out every single day.
And a reason why you might want to see what these other players can do, because, I don't think that anybody would really argue that one of our main problems is that we haven't had good end of the roster players. So, these players will be competing for the end of the roster next year, and you'd want some data on as to whether they're good enough to kind of handle it. One thing before I get into Trent Grisham specifically is Jay Groom, who has been terrible in AAA. His ERA is above 8. Do you know who else's ERA was above 8 in AAA? Pedro Avila. And now he's suddenly somebody who we like, is he going to be our third starter next year? Which, oh my God, anybody who says that, please God, do not let Pedro Avila be our third or fourth starter next year.
Yeah.
I don't even know if he's a major league player, but it's fun to, see what he's got right now. And we could do that with Jay Groom. But speaking of just like the end of the roster players, like I said, Trent Grisham has had more plate appearances than anybody on the Dodgers whose name is not Mookie Betts or Freddie Freeman. That's just wild to me. And the so the only reason why you'd have 500 plate appearances in a season in modern baseball, which very few players are getting that many plate appearances these days, unless they are like legitimate stars or just on a terrible team that is just throwing guys out at the wall. The only reason you would do that is if you're like a set it and forget it type player. You know, you're good against everybody. There's nobody that is going to platoon with you that's going to be better than you are. And that's just wildly inaccurate with Trent Grisham. He's a player with strengths, and he's a valuable player to any MLB team. I think that any MLB team would take Trent Grisham. But you wouldn't set him and forget him. That's not how you would use Trent Grisham. He has like these very obvious flaws that are super easy to point out. He is bad on anything that's in on his hands. So any player who's a right-handed pitcher with glove side command or a left-handed pitcher with arm side command who can get in on his hands, he absolutely cannot hit those. So that's a weakness. He is terrible against pitchers with good walk rates who do not give up walks. The reason why is because he basically has to be ahead in the count in order to do damage. It seems like his approach in general is to get ahead in the count and either take a walk or get that meatball fastball and smoke it. And it really shows up. He's great at hitting the fastball, and he's great when ahead in the count, but holy crap, when he falls behind in the count, do his numbers fall off. Like through 1 and 2 in a count, he has a -4 WRC plus. Through 0 and 2, a -24 WRC plus.
I still don't understand the negative WRC plus. I'm scared to admit it at this point, but I truly don't understand how you can be negative. Like it feels like dividing by 0. But anyway, continue.
It's just you just got to be less than half as good as average, right? So like 100% worse than league average would be 0 WRC plus. So you just have to be half of what the major league average is in those situations. And so he's a little bit worse than what the like half of MLB would be in those situations, and most of those people just automatically get like taken out of the majors, so that's why it kind of messes with the data a little bit. But it's basically that he can't hit the ball when he's behind in the count, because now pitchers can throw anything. He can't sit fastball. If you throw it in the zone, he gets lost. And so he has these very specific strengths and these specific weaknesses. He's terrible against breaking balls. He can't hit pitches in on his hands, and he's terrible when he's behind in the count. So that means that where he's good, where he thrives, is against pitchers with terrible walk rates, because he gets ahead in the count and he doesn't chase. That's a tangible skill. That is a quality like thing to have as a player, especially on like, you know, not one of the stars on your team. He's obviously got a great glove, and he has these weaknesses. He should be platooned for. And you could say, yeah, he hits left-handed pitchers just as well as he hits right-handed pitchers, which is true. But fun fact, that's not the only way you can platoon a player. You can platoon based on anything that you want in terms of like, let's make sure that this player is set up to thrive in every situation. And if you have a pitcher who can put the ball in on his hands, who has command, and who throws breaking balls, he's just not in a position to thrive. And part of the reason for that is because we do not have any backup options, right? It's like Jose Azocar had a bad year in AAA this year, and so we couldn't bring him up and have him satisfy the role of like a backup. So we just had to play him every single day, and that was not setting him up to thrive at all. But the thing about that is that it's so easy just to find a player who fits the roles that he is bad at. Like it took me 2 seconds to just find a player who would probably be basically free to get from another team, and that's former Padre Edward Olivares. He is bad. I mean, he's not bad, but he's like a replacement level MLB player, maybe a little bit above that. But he's good at the things that Trent Grisham is bad at. He is good at hitting breaking balls. He's good at pitches that are glove side right-handed, arm side left-handed. He attacks the ball rather than waits. You know, all he does is satisfy those things that Trent Grisham is bad at. And now you're freeing up Trent Grisham to, 1, stay healthy, 2, not get overworked, and 3, only face situations in which he would succeed. And it's just frustrating that we don't even do that with the 7th most used player on our team. Like, you don't need 7 set it and forget it players, and Trent Grisham is not a set it and forget it player. We need a bench whose skill sets are good in the weaknesses of the players that are like not our stars but the rest of our lineup.
I've just been staring at Trent Grisham through a 2-0 count. He has a 148 batting average and a 425 on base percentage. Like,
So he's just
like,
waiting at that point, right?
it's just he's just waiting. Yeah, no, 100%. No, I hope everyone who's been watching on YouTube has been looking at this chart of Trent Grisham through each count, because it, again, there's a certain amount of this that's like normal. Like, of course, guys are gonna have like better WRC pluses with 3-ball counts than versus when they're down to 2 strikes. But like the degree, the gulf to which it's like, okay, like, yeah, like you're, on a 3-2 count, your on base percentage is 489, but your slug is 286. You know what I mean? And it's just like,
he's not even swinging. Yeah,
he's not even swinging. Every time. You know what I mean? So it's and he's got a great eye, because like he's walking on a full count 37.4% of the time and striking out 23.1% of the time. So he's like decent at spoiling pitches and like doing whatever. But yeah, I mean, he's just like, it's like you said, like you can find a good foil for him. The thing that is the most mind-blowing to me that you laid out just now is that the Dodgers only have 2 players with at least 479 plate appearances, and that we have 7. Like, that, I don't think I've seen a distillation of what is wrong with our roster construction compared to the Dodgers in a pure, like, just one sentence, easy to digest sort of thing. Because again, it's like, it's that thing that's like sort of like, we got our guys, and our guys are, who they are, and set it and forget it. But it's like, the teams that are successful don't do that. The Braves have 7 players who are legitimate stars, and and only 4 of them have that many plate appearances as us. You know what I mean? So
that's Trent Grisham. Who, like, Trent Grisham? That's not a name that you think that guy probably has 500 plate appearances. Like,
right.
Cronenworth at first also should have fewer plate appearances, especially as like, you could put so many people in at first base who would, satisfy whatever he's weak at. It's just like, why don't we take advantage of every single matchup? And why do these smart teams do it consistently when we can't understand that there's this gulf between us in those scenarios?
I really think that, I hate to get this, I feel like a youth pastor or something like that. But I think that the original sin of this team truly is pride from everyone. Like, from AJ Preller, certainly, of like, he's got his guys, he's got his roster, he's got his way, he's such a star fucker, and like, that's like his thing. He's like bringing in everyone. The players being like, I hit here in the lineup and I play this position and this is what I do. Bob Melvin, to a certain extent, of being like, well, fuck you, this is the piece of shit lineup you're gonna give me. Like, I'm gonna run it out there and run it into the ground.
Every day
I'm gonna, because I don't trust anyone else. So I'm just gonna put. Oh, this is the team you're gonna give me. Fine, I'm just gonna put them out there. And I just think that, like, again, it's like you put the Dodgers and the Braves out there, and like, they're putting aside their own egos for the sake of winning, and it is working. And correlation, not causation, et cetera, et cetera. There's obviously a lot of other factors in play, but there's a reason that other teams don't do this. Our guys are tired. Like, they're just tired.
They are,
They're fucking wiped.
You look at the list. They're all doing poorly. All of them.
Yeah, like, again, it's like, I think a lot of people don't play baseball, like, to this extent. No one's going to the batting cage this much and taking this many hacks. But, like, if you golf, like, imagine going to the driving range every single day. Even if you love just going and hitting balls, your back would start to feel it after 4 months. You know what I mean? And like, baseball is not the same as football or basketball or soccer in that sense of like the wear and tear it puts on your body just from like a peak standpoint. But after 5 months, you're gonna start to break down. Like, it's just gonna happen, and that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing as a team. So
it's not even just that. It's also just like, set everybody up to thrive. I want everybody to be in the position to thrive, and it sucks that we don't.
Yes. And guess what? Like, everyone would be happier too if they were put in positions to succeed. But alas, Richard, John, it's hard to believe this is kind of the end of the episode. Do you have anything else that you want to add on this before we wrap things up?
I like that you had to go through a laundry list of original sins. I mean, original sin being pride, and our list is so long that you didn't even get to the fact that we can like never use Josh Hader how we would like to use him. Like, it's just like, it's everybody. It's like, there's so many people, like, we can't use the roster how we would want to use it, and it's frustrating.
So, to tank or not to tank, if you made it this far in the episode and you haven't figured it out yet, the answer is we should tank. We should tank.
2 games, just 2 games.
2 games. It's like, it's really not that hard in the sense of like, the answer is so obvious what they stand to benefit from. And I'm afraid that they won't do it for the same reason that we're in this mess in the first place, pride. It's like, if we're a 78 win team, that's a lot better than being a 71 win team. And so therefore, like, we're going to be the 78 because then it's instead of, shitty, we're just stinky, farty, smelly. And that somehow that's not as bad. And that's going to end up setting the franchise back even further. So, not the cheeriest app, but I think we're not in a cheery spot, and that's okay.
No.
Like, I think the sooner we accept that, and then the sooner we can move on. So this has been a somewhat shorter episode of Pods Above Replacement. We thank you for joining us. We hope you watch us on YouTube, subscribing to us, joining our Discord to talk about anything under the sun when it comes to stat-related questions. There's actually a great question in there that John and I need to respond to today about the linear value of war, dollars per war. For instance, it's somewhere between $8 and $10 million per win above replacement. Does that continue? Does that go, when you get to your 5th war in a given year, is that still linear, or does it start to curve a little bit? And if you want the answer to that, you got to get on the Padres Hot Tub Patreon, patreon.com/Padres Hot Tub. That's how you get on the Discord. That's how we get on the Pods Above Replacement channel on the Discord. But until next week, for John Precoda, I'm Raphie Cantor. We will see you next time.